Welcome to the Adulting Podcast. I'm Zack Peter, a naturally platinum blonde podcaster, author, and sassy self-improvement addict spewing all those burning questions you're too afraid to ask.
And I'm Abigail Fraher, an unfiltered boss babe, daylighting as a lifestyle guru, stirring the pot on social issues. We're here to help you look cute,
live well,
work hard,
and stay woke.
Together,
let's conquer adulting. Welcome back to Adulting, everybody. I'm Zack Peter, and I am flying solo. I almost said I'm writing solo in studio today, but we don't have a studio anymore because it's 2020 and everything's shut down in California. It's just me today, though. Abigail is handling business in New York, but don't worry, she'll be back on the show next week. And I'm excited because today's guest is killing it in adulting. She created her own viral blog called On Adulting, helping us figure out our shit in a conscious and happy way, especially in 2020. I feel like that's what I need right now. She's got a new book out. It's called On Adulting, How Millennials and any human really can work less, live more, and bend the rules for good. Please welcome Katina Mountanos. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. I've heard about this blog for a while now, and I've seen your Instagram. It's so pretty. The aesthetic is so cute. And I'm like, okay, I need her to help me out because, like, I know our show is called Adulting, but I feel like sometimes I have these weeks where my brain is just like mush. And I'm like, I need some help.
I feel that. I feel like that is the definition of adulting, right?
Right? Even when you feel like you're like, yes, this is it. I've got my shit together. And then you hit a Monday where you're just like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah, totally. I feel like I thought that getting into adulthood was going to be so perfect in this ideal world where everything was amazing. And I feel like more and more what I'm learning is just being comfortable with the weirdness that comes with it.
I know. The other day I was having candy for breakfast. I mean, and when I say candy, like, look, I'm that bitch from Los Angeles. Like, my candy is like Smart Sweets where it has like no sugar and it's high fiber gummies. Okay, that's my candy. But so I was eating that for breakfast the other day and I'm like, this is everything we expect adulthood to be. But I'm really just hungover and eating this because like my body just wants more sugar. And so it's like adulting, like what we like pictured adulting was supposed to be in our heads is never the reality. So we have to kind of like create that reality, which is what I love about this new book is like you're helping us create that reality consciously so that we can focus on happiness and not these like metrics of what achievement are supposed to be.
Yeah, totally. And I think that that exact point that you're hitting on is so important because so many of us end up being on this hamster wheel all the time where we're just unconsciously living and we're living a life that looks the same every single day, especially in this pandemic, and we feel really unfulfilled. But I think when we're able to just become aware and just feel like we have authority over those choices, whether they're, eating candy for breakfast or, I don't even know, like deciding what the rest of your life is going to look like, you at least feel a bit more connected and happier.
I love that. Okay, so before we dive deep into the topics of the book, we start off every show with our Espresso Yourself segment. So are you ready to espresso yourself?
Yes, I love that.
Okay, so first question is, and you're just going to finish the next couple of sentences for me. First one is, I can't start my morning without.
Ooh, I feel like it's a tie of meditation and coffee. Two opposite things, but both of them are necessary.
I mean, talk about adulting. I'm drinking my Whole Foods coffee right now because I ran out of coffee yesterday. I was too lazy to go to the market. I was like, I'll figure it out tomorrow morning. And then I woke up this morning. I'm like, fuck, I don't have any coffee. So I had to like drag my ass to Whole Foods this morning to get coffee.
I love that.
What type of meditation do you do in the morning?
I don't do any guided meditations. I really love kind of focusing on breath. I feel like that is the most impactful session for me. So I just really like setting aside time to sit in silence, connect to my breath, get grounded, and approach the day not in a like stressed, anxious way, which is easier said than done, but
Very much, but I love that. Okay, next
Yeah.
next express to yourself is when I go to the gym or when I work out,
Hmm. Oh my gosh. Well, so movement is definitely one of my baseline most important things to do in a day. And I used to be obsessed with like Equinox and Soul Cycle and all those types of workouts. But especially during the pandemic, I've really been lowering the bar. Like movement counts. So going on walks, running, whatever it is, it doesn't need to be fancy. So that's my new outlook
I love
on
that.
working out.
I know for me, I found like a neighbor in my building and we work out together and we hold each other accountable. We're like, we're going to do it.
I love
And so we work
that.
out for maybe about like 45 minutes every day. And
Yeah.
we mix it up in terms of what workouts we put. I mean, I'd say like I actually have any feedback. She really puts the workouts together. But I feel like I was having these moments where you fall off the wagon during quarantine and where I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm kind of bored. I'm just going to make some popcorn and have a drink and watch Netflix and not be productive tonight." And then it became a habitual thing every night. And I'm just like, no. Whereas now when I find somebody that can help hold me accountable and I can work out with, then I work out and I come back home and I'm just like, I don't feel the need to drink or to snack mindlessly or to just numb out on Netflix. You know what I mean? I'm like, now I
Yeah.
feel good because I did something good for myself. I did something that felt productive for me and my body and like my mental clarity.
Totally. Yes. And I think that lowering the bar, sometimes having someone accountable that you have to be accountable to, and also being accountable to yourself in a different way. That's not like, if I don't do an hour and a half long workout at the gym, then I could just like binge out on Netflix and popcorn. Like if I kind of shift that mindset and say, I could just go for a walk with my
Yeah.
dog and that still counts today and I can still feel good. So I think that's been a really powerful shift for me too.
No, absolutely. And I feel like it's kind of even if you just commit to like 15 minutes, once you get through those
Yeah,
15 minutes, you're like, I can do an extra 10. I can walk an extra couple of
exactly.
blocks. I can do a little more. And then you feel motivated to keep going.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm sure we'll get to this, but this idea of micro habits is a lot of what I talk about in the book, and kind of setting yourself up for success and achieving those small little changes in your life actually starts to shift the way that your brain works, and you start to make those connections in a much easier, much more habitual way. So you could add on to that every single time you do it. So
Love
15
it.
minutes is a great start. Yeah.
Okay, next express to yourself is I feel sexiest when.
Ooh, I feel sexiest when I feel connected to my partner. My
Mm.
fiance and I have been together for 6 years and we got engaged last year. And I
Oh,
feel like when we're kind of doing our own thing, it's really easy to just feel disconnected and not like, you know, loving or in the mood for anything. But when we set aside time to just like really connect, if you couldn't tell, I'm a Gemini. So
I'm a Gemini too.
yeah, being able to just connect and talk is that's my love language. So
I love it. And last one is I feel most like a boss when
hmm. These are such good questions. I've never thought about them. I feel most like a boss when I feel in control of the decisions in my life. So I think a lot of times, as has kind of been a theme in my answers, when I'm just doing stuff without thinking about it, I feel so depleted and upset and unfulfilled. But when I feel like I'm actively kind of choosing all of the things that I want, I feel like I can do anything.
Okay, but see, you say that, and I feel like that's more of a mindset because I feel like it's really about how we approach our day and our
Yeah.
lives. And I feel like most people either are in this mindset of like, life is happening to me. I missed the bus today. I got to late work. My coffee fell on my uniform. Like, whatever it is, like, we're in this headspace of like, I guess reactive instead of being proactive. And so how did you find that place of like coming at it as like, I'm choosing my life. Even if I do spill my coffee or even if I do miss the bus, I choose what happens next.
Yes, That is such a beautiful kind of observation and connection. I think for me, the biggest thing came from really observing my feelings. I think that a lot of times in our society today, we're told that certain feelings are bad and certain feelings are good. And when a bad feeling comes up, like I feel, terrible that my coffee spilled everywhere and now I missed my bus, we tend to suppress that and avoid it. And we're like, okay, moving on to the next thing. But I think the really important and monumental shift is becoming aware of why you feel that way so that you can actually use that as a clue to decide, do I want this feeling to stick around or do I want to choose something different? So really taking ownership and just observing. I love the kind of phrase of just starting to get curious about your feelings instead of making it this thing where it's like, I have a to-do list and now I have to add assessing feelings to my to-do list. It's more just like when it comes up, can you sit with it for a moment and can you observe what it's doing to you? And then you start to build onto that and make more connections as time goes on.
My theory is that people are afraid of their own potential or they're afraid of their own power.
Yeah.
So for people that maybe haven't reached that level of awareness, what advice or tips have you found that have worked for you that are learning to unlock that potential and then be okay with it without being afraid of it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it's funny, in the book, there's actually a whole chapter on that exact topic, which is that fear is an innate human behavior that actually is really great. It's a really, really powerful thing. And I think that's what you're honing in on, is this fear of our possibility. And a lot of times we've been conditioned that fear is bad and we should just never acknowledge it. So I have this exercise in there that's all about, I guess it's two-sided. One of them is about understanding your fears and kind of viewing them almost as goals. It comes from a practice from Tim Ferriss, actually, the podcaster, which is called fear setting. So instead of setting goals, you start to assess, why is this fear holding me back from making a choice? And you get really honest about those things that are scaring you. And then on the flip side to that, I love this practice of remembering times that you've been brave and kind of pairing together this concept of like, things can be really scary. And oftentimes the things that we're scared of don't end up happening. The probability of them are really, really low when we write it out on paper. But also, I have this amazing sense of courage and braveness within me that I've experienced many times in my life that I often forget. So being able to see both of those things right in front of you really allows you to start to understand, where is this fear coming from and do I need to hold on to it? And sometimes you do. Sometimes things are really genuinely scary and that's okay. But understanding why you feel that way is the key.
Yeah, I love that. I always try to remind people, like when I have friends or somebody that's going, or even with myself, it's really a reminder just for me, like, check your track record. Remember the last time you felt like this? Remember the last time you were worried about, this specific bill or this specific opportunity or not getting this deal or whatever the case may be. And then being like, remember when you didn't get it? Or remember when you thought you didn't get it and then you did? Like, remember you survived that. You made it through that. So you're not going to be taken out the way that I guess you think that you are, even if you don't get that.
Totally. And I think the really interesting thing right now, I'm actually getting my master's in clinical psychology, and the focus is on mind-body connection and positive psychology. And one of my teachers just talked about this really interesting example of the way that our brain perceives negative feelings and positive feelings. And a negative feeling is, in our mind, seen as almost like a rock. Like just one of them is so heavy and can have so much impact on the way that you perceive the world. But positive experiences, like the ones that you were just describing, they're almost like feathers. So you need so many of them to be able to be the same weight as that bad one rock. So I think that oftentimes keeping a log of all of the really cool stuff that you've been able to do is really important, because we have to keep reminding ourselves of all of those positive things in order for it to have the same impact.
Absolutely. What is your take on intuition? Do you feel like it's as powerful as a lot of other spiritual gurus seem to say it is? And why do you think a lot of us ignore intuition?
Yeah, I mean, intuition to me, it's really interesting. In my writing, I actually describe this as, I kind of talk about the first time I ever connected with my intuition or my higher self. And I remember I was on a run when I was like 16, and I had just gotten into a fight with my mom, and I was like, had all these stories going in my head of how bad I was as a person. And on this run, this small little voice came out that was like, you're going to be okay. Like, you're fine. Just keep going. Just keep going. And I was so taken aback by that voice, because I'd never heard it before, which I kind of describe as intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's kind of this perfect example of how we have this thing inside of us all the time. It's this higher, simpler self that is always looking out for us. And we've just been conditioned for so long throughout our lives not to listen to it. So we have all these stories layered on us that tell us, like, don't listen to this voice. It's not you. Or you hear that yelling of your mom or that ex-boyfriend who was like, you're so selfish, or whatever it is. And when you start to hear that voice more and more often, you really start to see that it is you in your best, most clear version of yourself. So I think that, to me, actions like meditation or even just going for walks or kind of being in silence and really cultivating that part of you is probably at the core of everything that we've been saying so far. So, I mean, I think it's probably the most powerful thing that we could do. And we all have access to it.
I agree. And I think with intuition, like, the funny thing is for me, and I kind of had this moment this year, which I think 2020 forces a lot of people to really like look inward and deal with your inner shit and just deal with the inner you know what I mean? And so for me, I had this like light bulb moment this year where I realized like there were certain things that I always kind of, and I guess this goes back to checking your track record. There were things in the past, like maybe 10, 12, 13 years ago, that I was like, I would envision and I'd be like, I could see my life going in this direction. I could see this happening. And then all of the sudden, you know, here we are all these years later, and I kind of look back at the last 2 or 3 years and I was like, wow, I remember visualizing that when I was 17 years old. And then it came to reality. And then I kind of checked in with myself and I'm like, there are so many things that I intuitively always knew were going to happen for me, or like a path that I always knew I was going to be on. And it was only when I would force it to happen on my own timing, when I would try to like put the round peg in the square hole, that it kind of was halted. But when I let go and I kind of just allowed the flow of life to take me where I intuitively know I'm supposed to end up, that's when it just comes like boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean?
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I feel like that's what writing this book was for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I started my career in finance in New York. And like, could not have been more far from what my true intuition was telling me I should do. But I think that's kind of what adulthood is. You get, you know, to this place where you feel like everything is supposed to be, you work so hard for, this is what everyone told you life is supposed to start now. And then you get here and you're like, wait, this is not what I thought. And my intuition is telling me something that I need to do differently. And so I couldn't agree more when you trust in yourself, essentially, and the choices that you intuitively can make. Things start to flow to you rather than you trying to force your life to look a certain way that's not aligned with who you really are.
Yeah, and it's really just about kind of releasing this illusion of control. But it's so interesting because our culture is constantly trying to get us to control things and to reach things on a
Yeah.
certain time frame. I was having this conversation with one of my friends last night where she's like, "Oh my God, I'm turning 28 in this month." And she's like, "I'm going to be 30 soon. And like, I don't know if I want to turn 30 yet." And I was kind of just sitting there and I was like, I love getting older. I love the wisdom that comes with it. I don't love the wrinkles and the sagginess and the stretch mark. I don't love the physical aspects of it, but you know, that's what our plastic surgeons are for. JK. But for me, I was like, no, I feel so much more like confident every single year. Like when there's a new birthday that I reach, I don't dread it. I'm just like, like I feel more myself every year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. I feel like when I was younger, I was so scared of getting older. I was like, I thought I was going to be this person who did all these things by this age because, as you said, society really conditions us to say, like, you need to check all these boxes by a certain time in order to be successful and worthy in this world. And so I was always like, I can't believe I'm turning 22, 23, 24, 25. I'm 28 now, but I just was so worried about it. And the more that I really stopped trying to control things and allowed things to flow more, and really listened to myself, I started to become so much more excited, as you said, about all the stuff that you let go of as you get older. I feel like you really, as you gain wisdom, you also release expectations so much more and start to step into what you believe versus what everyone else is telling you should.
Oh, 1000%. And it's hard because sometimes I feel like in the world of social media, like I find myself like on TikTok and I'm like, oh, but I'm competing with like these 22-year-olds and like the 42-year-old guy
Oh
that
my
would have hit
gosh.
on me at 22. Like, you know, he's going to think he's hotter than I am. And I want him to think I am. But like then I kind of reach this point where like, no, I literally am, I think, the hottest I've ever felt. You know what I mean? And I feel like there were so many years that I spent chasing this like need to be, you know, skinny or pretty or fit or whatever. And now I'm kind of at a place where like I feel like I am all of those things, but it was more of like an internal shift that needed to happen for it to like externally, you know, be. And it's less of like, I mean, because look, at the reality is attraction is really subjective to the beholder. You know what I mean? That like what one person thinks is hot, another person isn't. It's about you feeling hot within yourself, and then you're going to exude that, and then that confidence is what's really going to attract people.
Totally. Yeah, I love that so much. I couldn't agree more.
So I want to pivot over to passion, because I know in the book you have an exercise that you like to use to help people find passion in what, like 24 hours? How do we, because I feel like a lot of people are afraid of their passions. And just last week, we had a really good episode about this guy who used to work at Sherwin-Williams and then got fired and then built like this million following on TikTok through paint. And he just loved paint. And so he mixes paint.
Oh my gosh,
and he has a million
I've
people that
seen
follow him mix
Yes.
paint on TikTok. And so I was like, and he's like, I've always loved paint and mixing paint. And I'm like, some people would look at that and be like, that is so stupid. But yet here he is with his own paint deal and with his, you know, following on TikTok. And like, he just leaned into that. And when you lean into your passion is when you really excel at it. So what is this exercise for channeling and finding what our passion is?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, so there's a couple of different layers of it, but the first thing I would love to say is I feel like for so long I was chasing my passion and I was like, where is it? The way I describe it in the book is I thought that the sorting hat from Harry Potter was just going to pop out of nowhere and be like, this is what your passion is. Now you know. And I think this is kind of a theme of so much of what we're saying, but I feel like the way we've been conditioned to think in our world is that your passion is something outside of you. It's something that you need to find and search for, and it will just be bestowed upon you. And really, at the end of the day, it's something that you've always known, and you've just been afraid to start tapping into. And so the first aspect of this is thinking about what you loved as a kid. And I think a lot of times we dismiss these actions that we took as a kid where we were just like, oh, that's what I liked then. That's not what I like now. And you're then sitting at your like desk job in finance and you're like, I don't know what my passion is. So the first step is really starting to think about what was the stuff that you did for fun when you were 8 years old. That age is scientifically proven to be when we start to get our conscious thinking. So for me, as an example, I think it's much deeper than just saying, you know, I liked playing soccer or I played soccer. When I was 8, I played soccer and did dance all the time, and competitively. And when you take it a layer down from there, I didn't necessarily like playing soccer that much. I kind of did it because my dad played soccer when he was growing up in Greece and like wanted me to do that. But what I really loved was cheering on my teammates and connecting with them and lifting them up. And I was always that person that was like motivating everyone on the team. But I think taking that second layer of understanding what you loved and why is really important to start to make connections. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect, and this goes into a lot more detail in the book, but I came up with this exercise called your North Star statement. And this is really like a barometer and a guidepost essentially to help you understand if the actions that you're taking in your life are aligned with your values and where you want to be. So that passion that you want to exude in your life. So essentially it's like a personal mission statement. It's just like what a business would describe as what their mission statement is out in the world, but it's really about what your kind of personal passion is and how you want to step into that. So I'll just read what the sentence would be. And obviously you could take notes on it, or it's something you could think about a little bit. I know I'm not the best listener and action taker, but the sentence is, I blank. So what verb do you want to start taking action on? To who? So what audience do you want to help? And what do you want to help them do? Do what? So what is the outcome? So for me, it's I inspire millennials to find their passion and purpose so they can be happier, more conscious humans.
I love that.
Yeah. So I think obviously this is all things to just start thinking about, but I think it's really combining what is the stuff that you always knew within you and how could you start really using that as a guidepost to the ways that you could figure out what your passion is in your life right now.
And I love that you talked about going back to like your 8-year-old self, because I feel like the older I get, the younger I get, like the more I return to the kid that I used to be, because I think like we're really that person, because that was the person we were naturally, organically, before we became a teenager and before we went into high school and before the world started telling us what we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act to get along with certain people. And like, look, let's be honest, the pretty bitch in high school that was the popular girl, like, where is she at now? She's working at Starbucks. Like, let's be real, she's not building her side hustle. Like, the hustlers that we see now were the ones that, you know, were shy or timid, or they're the ones that didn't peak in high school. And, you know, we just need to break down all of that conditioning that we received and that outside messaging and marketing, and realize that we're really the same people that we were as kids, and we just need to tap back into that. And that's where we're our like authentic selves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think what's so interesting even is when it comes to your career and your passion, a lot of times you're told that isn't realistic.
Yeah.
That's not something that will work. And there's a whole kind of chapter on this in the book. But when I thought about what I wanted my career to be when I was younger, it was always writing and motivating others through writing. And my family is, you know, they're immigrants from Greece, and they were like, dude, no. You're not going to be a writer. That's not possible for you. Like, you need to go into something that is more outwardly successful, which is how I found myself in finance. And I think when I thought about what I loved as a kid and then what I found myself doing in my free time, which was journaling, helping people, thinking just in general about how to improve yourself, those were the things that I would do for free, no matter what. And so I think being able to connect all of that stuff and really release what you think is realistic, and start to tap into it more and more often is kind of the key towards living a more purpose-filled life that, you know, has your passion weave throughout it.
So when you kind of lost your way, when you gave up on writing, what did you think your career and life were going to be?
Yeah, so I mean, I went to an undergraduate business program at NYU, and I thought that I come from a family of small business owners. So I just thought that's like what I would do. And then I got to Stern, and everyone was wearing suits. They were all talking about investment banking. And I was like, oh, if this is what success looks like here, I know how to achieve. I know how to kind of follow a path of achievement. Mm-hmm. So that's how I'm going to set myself up for success. And I never really spent the time, and I don't think many of us do. That's why adulting is so hard. Right. But I really never looked inside of myself. I just kept kind of looking outside of me to see what others thought was successful.
It's funny. My brother is 19 right now, and he has these moments where he leans into things that he's passionate about, but he's also at that age where like the world is kind of telling him what he's supposed to do. So the other day, he originally wanted to like launch this like this all natural men's organic skincare line, and I was like, that's great. And my mom was a little worried. She's like, is he like he's gonna be making like soaps in his bathroom? Like what? And I was like, you have to let him lean into it. I go, nobody thought that I would be, you know, I was a blabber in school that like, and I built a career out of talking, and, you know, pushing conversations, but I go for, and then now he's at a place where he's like, oh no, I think I want to get into like real estate. And that seems like a smart, you know, move to make because I can make money and it's a little more standard. And I'm kind of like, okay. But I also know that like, he's at that age where he's going to need to kind of find his footing, but it's just so interesting how you look at where you were at that age and you're like, you know, it is so easy to just take in those messages, you know? And then I'm like, you guys need to listen to my show. I'm always like, my siblings need to listen to my show, but they're just not at that level of consciousness or readiness yet. And like everybody has their own timing and their path.
Totally. I couldn't agree with that more. I feel like if someone told me when I was in college that this was what my career would be, I would be like, you're crazy. There's no way that's going to happen. But I think also being exposed to it is amazing because somewhere that inner part of you, a lot of what I talk about in my writing is this idea of our baby brain and how our all of those stories, that conscious part of our brain is really, or unconscious part of our brain is really driving our decisions without us realizing it. So if we just continue to collect more data points, subconsciously, we will expose ourselves to more decisions that will shift our path. Yep. So I think that attending talks, listening to podcasts, whatever it is, even if it doesn't make an impact on you right now, it is getting into your subconscious, which really does allow us to make those shifts over time.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's really just about like tuning in and being like, does this make me happy? Like, why do I wake up every morning and show up at this job and don't feel motivated? And what is my end goal? Like, and the reality is like, sometimes, you do need to work at Starbucks for a year to build your bank. And like, it may not make you happy within the next 12 months, but if you have a purpose and an intention, you're like, this is a means to an end. And right now I'm doing this so that I can have the money to build my side hustle to make sure that I'm getting where I want to be in a place that's going to make me feel the most fulfilled. Because I think that's another big misconception is a lot of people are like, oh, well, this is my passion, so I need to do this tomorrow. But like, I can't do that tomorrow because I have rent that I have to pay, or I have student loan debts, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, start to build the pieces so that you can get to that place that you want to be in. And it takes time.
Totally. I could not agree more. I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is the concept of time. especially when you get into adulthood, when you're so used to working on quarters or semesters or things happen so quickly that you want everything to have happened yesterday. But I love the way you described that. And to me, that's really what conscious living is about, is like understanding that this is where you are in your life and it might not be forever, and it's actually going to be helping you get to that next phase, but you don't need to just like quit it all and sell all your stuff and travel unless you want to.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's funny.
You don't need to just like give up on life. And
I remember as a kid, I wanted to be an actor. I was like, I want to be an actor. And I remember even like at 13, like going out and booking my first agent and going on auditions. And then I got into college and then I started studying acting. And I was like, oh, this is awful. Like these actors are terrible. Like, why do I keep dating them? And then I realized that like, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to like entertain people. I wanted to bring laughter and levity and thought-provoking conversation. And the only way my, brain was able to understand that was through the television screen and through that medium. And so in my head, I was like, that's the way you entertain people, is by acting, and then I realized I don't want that life. And, here I am doing like podcasting and other forms of entertainment that bring me fulfillment and that also, are able to be impactful in other people's lives.
Totally. That is exactly what, to me, finding your passion is like getting really clear on the why, right? Like it's not just acting, it's making people feel happier through talking and connecting with them. For me, when I look back at soccer, it wasn't playing soccer and scoring goals. It was motivating and connecting with people. So I think that really getting to that deeper level, and also knowing that like things could change. Maybe in 10 years you will be an actor. Like, no.
I know. That's another thing,
right?
is kind of detaching from the outcome and being like, you know what? Next year I may just throw it all in and pivot to something else.
Exactly.
And just being okay with rolling with
liberating.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing I want to talk about is when we have these stuck moments where we feel maybe like the results aren't happening on our time, or we aren't feeling motivated, and maybe we are leaning into our passion, maybe we are on our path, but inevitably roadblocks do come up and we do have bad weeks. How do we get through those slumps? How do you get through those slumps?
That's a really good question. Well, I guess I think that idea comes back to this concept of understanding our feelings, right? So if something is coming up for you that's really difficult and you're like, this isn't happening fast enough, or it's not happening in the way I want, at least for me, and this is a lot of what I work with my clients on, is understanding why you want that thing to happen in that way and what your ultimate purpose is. So really coming back down to like, do I want this to happen because I want to control the outcome and I want to achieve a certain thing to, like be perceived in a certain way in the world? Or do I want this outcome to happen because I feel connected to the purpose that I'm making? And I think that a lot of times we get caught in that like external vision of what we think everyone will think when we achieve that thing. But really sitting with what those feelings are coming up with for you during that roadblock. And also knowing that like life is weird, right? Like things really don't work out how we want them to at all, ever. And one of the last chapters in the book, I think in a lot of these like classic self-help books, you're told to like set all these goals by a certain time. And like, now that you've understood all of these strategies, what do you want to do with them? And how do you want to start working towards a goal? And actually, for me, I really flip that idea on its head. And I am like, how can you trust that whatever is coming into your life is teaching you something that you need to know right now? So is that roadblock showing you that maybe you're too attached to the outcome? Or is it showing you that some type of feeling is coming up for you? So I think it's really becoming aware of what it's trying to teach you, and also using that as practice to release expectations around how something should be.
And so how do we let go of the expectation? Because I feel like it sounds like, oh, we just release it like a drop of a pin.
Yeah.
But like, what does that look like?
It is a consistent practice of showing up to sit with exactly kind of what we've been talking about, this idea of those feelings that we always want to avoid. So I think in terms of like literal tactical practices, I recommend really just setting aside time to be alone. I think that a lot of times when we try to practice these mindset shifts, we're like, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it like while I'm scrolling through my phone or watching Netflix. But setting intentional time to really start to parse through what those feelings are that come up for you, because letting go of expectations is something that you have to work through how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not something that you're just like, okay, I'm going to release this and let it go and not care. You really have to understand, like, why do I even have this expectation? Where is it coming from? What is it trying to tell me? So setting aside time to be alone, to journal with your thoughts, to think about them, even on a walk or whatever it looks like, and making sure that you continue to show up for that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Your new book is called On Adulting, How Millennials and Any Human Really Can Work Less, Live More, and Bend the Rules for Good. Where can people get it, and where can they follow you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It is available anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. There's also a couple of signed copies still available on my website, since I wasn't able to do any in-person book signings. But yeah, you could definitely check in with me on Instagram at onadulting, and any form of social media. And my website is onadulting.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for calling in and chatting with me today. I feel like people are going to leave this episode feeling motivated or feeling unstuck, and hopefully leaning more into their passion.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
All right, guys, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Adulting. You can follow me at Just Plain Zack all over the internet. Don't forget to follow Abigail at Abigail_AF, and follow at The Adulting Podcast to stay up to date with the latest show news, to get exclusive clips from our episodes every week, and just fun content. We love to connect with you guys there. So please, if you're listening to this episode, post on your Instagram stories, tag the show, tag me, tag Abigail. We'll repost you, and let's just keep the conversation going. We want to push this on adulting motivation and passion out there so that everybody can feel like a badass millennial this week. Especially ending 2020. Let's end it strong and go into next year as a bad bitch.
Love it.
All right, guys. Until next week, we'll be busy. #adulting.